Now on Broadway, An Enemy of the People is a New York Times critics pick. Jeremy Strong is one of the great actors of his generation, hails the Chicago Tribune. In a performance the Wall Street Journal praises as powerfully affecting and bitterly funny. Michael Imperioli sets off sparks, cheers the Hollywood Reporter. Victoria Pedretti is luminous, raves variety. From director Sam Gold and playwright Amy Herzog, An Enemy of the People is urgent, electrifying, and haunting, declares USA Today. An Enemy of the People, on Broadway through June 16th only.
On today's Smart 7, the Post Office inquiry hears from Mr Bates, David Cameron in Washington, and much more. It's Wednesday, 10th of April, it's Eid al-Fitr, and happy birthday, David Harbour.
The Smart 7. It's news, but not the news.
The Post Office inquiry was back in session on Tuesday. It's been running since 2020 under retired High Court Judge Sir Win Williams. It's safe to say the level of interest in the hearings has ramped up, though, in the wake of the ITV drama that brought a new spotlight on the cases of sub-postmasters accused and convicted of fraud. The man who has become synonymous with the victims of the scandal, Alan Bates, was in the witness chair, and he testified about his 2 decades-long battle for justice against what he called thugs in suits.
They just decided they were going to make a lesson of my case. And I think it was something the Post Office liked to try and give lessons of how they were in charge.
Bates was no fan of former Post Office Minister and now Lib Dem leader Ed Davey either, describing him as disappointing and offensive. Present at the hearing was current Post Office CEO Nick Reed, who was keen to emphasise how much things have changed.
I think we have dramatically changed the culture of the Post Office today, and that's clearly what I'm trying to do, both internally with the organisation and, of course, with postmasters at large.
As the nation waits for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to finally call a date for the general election, the Labour Party have been quietly building their manifesto with new policy announcements and commitments. This week has seen them turn their attention to the NHS with a plan to digitise children's medical records in a bid to tackle falling vaccination rates. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer told ITV News he's prepared to work hand in glove with the private sector to help reduce NHS waiting lists and resolve the current crisis at speed.
Where there's capacity in the private sector, that should be done to bring down the waiting lists. The principle that healthcare, the NHS, should be free at the point of need, of use, is absolutely fundamental to us.
Labour Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says that Labour will generate more funding for the NHS and for things like school breakfast clubs by making a focused effort to cut down on tax evasion and closing loopholes in proposed non-dom legislation.
The government's plans about non-doms, well, it turns out they've taken it but left a load of loopholes in it. If you are a non-dom, you can still get out of paying inheritance tax, and in the first year of their policy, there's a 50% discount.
Ireland officially got its youngest ever Prime Minister, or more properly Taoiseach, on Tuesday. Simon Harris, the former Minister for Higher Education, is just 37 years old, which makes him the 6th youngest leader in the world, behind French PM Gabriel Attal, who is only 35. Harris was formally sworn in by the President of Ireland at lunchtime and is facing into an immediate challenge with local and European elections due in early June. His party, Fine Gael, have been struggling in the polls, and he started his new job with a minor reshuffle and a promise to provide hope and a better future for all.
Whilst I am proudly the leader of Fine Gael, I will lead a coalition of 3 parties. And today, I sincerely promise to be a Taoiseach for all. I will work with you and for the country that I know we all love.
David Cameron is on a diplomatic tour of the United States at the moment with the intention of unblocking aid for Ukraine. The Foreign Secretary started with a visit to Donald Trump in Mar-a-Lago, with the Foreign Office describing the visit as standard protocol for a US presidential candidate. They discussed Ukraine and NATO and their love of the Queen, but no details of any agreement have been released. Cameron then headed to Washington, where he met with Secretary of State Blinken and discussed both Israel and Ukraine. He says there's been no change in the UK's position on arms exports to Israel, but was keener to politely push for a breakthrough in defence funding for Kyiv.
I come here with no intention to lecture anybody. I just come here as a believer that it's profoundly in your interest and your security to release this money and let it through.
Still to come on today's Smart 7, 10 goals and no winners in the Champions League, and the cast of Back to Black get to chat right after this.
Now on Broadway, An Enemy of the People is a New York Times Critics' Pick. Jeremy Strong is one of the great actors of his generation, hails the Chicago Tribune. In a performance the Wall Street Journal praises as powerfully affecting and bitterly funny. Michael Imperioli sets off sparks, cheers the Hollywood Reporter. Victoria Pedretti is luminous, raves variety. From director Sam Gold and playwright Amy Herzog, An Enemy of the People is urgent, electrifying, and haunting, declares USA Today. An Enemy of the People, on Broadway through June 16th only.
Welcome back.
Tuesday night saw the Lionesses back in action, facing Ireland in Dublin, where they won 2-0. Tuesday also saw the first legs of two of the Champions League quarter-finals as Arsenal hosted Bayern Munich, while Man City travelled to take on Real Madrid. There were 10 goals between the two games, but both ended in draws. Defending champions City finished 3-3 in Madrid, but Arsenal couldn't beat Bayern on their home turf, finishing 2-2. Mikel Arteta knows his team have work to do in Germany, while Pep Guardiola was feeling optimistic about next week's home game.
We have our people. Our people is there. We'll be sold out, and we need all of them, the energy during 95 minutes to try to beat the king of this competition. With our people in Manchester, we'll go for it.
The Amy Winehouse biopic Back to Black hits cinemas this Friday, and the cast and crew were out and about for the premiere on Monday night. The movie is directed by Sam Taylor Johnson, who also made Nowhere Boy, a story about young John Lennon, so she's got plenty of musical credentials, and with a score co-written by Nick Cave and a dramatic lead performance from Marisa Abela as Amy, it looks set for box office success. Eddie Marsan plays Amy's dad Mitch in the movie, and he told Chris Evans that meeting the man in real life really helped with the role.
The way I act is I always research things, and he even sung Fly Me to the Moon for me. At the end of it, he said, there you go, love you. And when I heard that, it broke my heart. I've got 4 teenage kids, and every time they leave the house or go to school, I say, all right, have a nice day, love you. And when he said that to me, I realised his daughter's not there anymore, and he still has that feeling.
If you're a Mia Goth fan, you'll be excited to hear the third part of the X trilogy is on the way. If you're not, you may need a quick catch-up. The X movies are smart modern slasher movies, starting with X and followed up with Pearl and now Maxine. They star actress Mia Goth and are written and directed by T. West. Mia plays actress Maxine Minx, trying to make it in 1980s LA, while also being chased by a killer called the Night Stalker. It's from production company A24 and it hits cinemas on July 5th.
So, Maxine. Your agent tells us you're quite a popular name in adult film and entertainment, is that correct?
I always wanted to be famous. Name 5 celebrities who got their start in horror movies.
Jamie Lee Curtis, John Travolta, Demi Moore, Brooke Shields, and
Maxine Minx.
You've been listening to The Smart 7. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Hit that follow button and have a great day. Give us 7 minutes, and we'll give you the world.
Now on Broadway, An Enemy of the People is a New York Times Critics' Pick. Jeremy Strong is one of the great actors of his generation, hails the Chicago Tribune. In a performance the Wall Street Journal praises as powerfully affecting and bitterly funny. Michael Imperioli sets off sparks, cheers the Hollywood Reporter. Victoria Pedretti is luminous, raves variety. From director Sam Gold and playwright Amy Herzog, An Enemy of the People is urgent, electrifying, and haunting, declares USA Today. An Enemy of the People, on Broadway through June 16th only.